So we've got about 25 minutes to ask questions. So I'm going to get off the stage because I think it's good to Steve to have his time. So let's have some questions. Yes, gentleman here. Let's get that. And then who's next? Yes, then gentleman over here.
Hi, Steve. Thanks very much for your very inspiring talk. Simon Abrams from EY. Just a couple of questions, if I may. So the first question is, do you think that the structure of IKEA, in terms of not operating to not a publicly listed company, do you think that enabled you to drive a transformational strategy? And I'm also really interested to understand how innovation bubbles up through, so you get a constant theme of business-ready, sustainability-type innovations that can drive your sales forward.
Okay, two great questions. EY is our auditor, know our company structure very well. But yeah, we're IKEA Group's owned by a Dutch foundation, Stichting Inca Foundation, and we're sort of closed system. I think it's irrelevant, actually, that structure. So we're very commercially focused. We're committed to a growth agenda, to being a long-term profitable business. And so I don't think so, to be honest. You still have to have a discussion with a supervisory board and with key stakeholders around what you do as a business. And so I think that being a successful business helps you be bold and forward-looking. That's the key difference. So I would say any business that's got momentum with it, that's when it's easiest to make the change, really on this. Sorry, your second question was the innovation. Innovation, I actually think once you frame, you really work through the bold targets, that drives the innovation agenda, because people have something to aim towards within the business. But I think I've set up an innovation team in IKEA Group, and we're actually scaling inside the business some more teams focused on innovation, looking externally as much as internally, because big business, every big business knows we're not great at innovation, we're great at scaling. So we will harvest innovation wherever we can and scale it.
Okay, one question each from now on. Yes, sir. Say who you are, where you're from, please.
Yeah, great. Richard Tarberton from BT. Great to see the leadership you guys are taking, and really impressed by the 100% all-in type goal. My challenge or question would be, how do you land the acceleration time frame that you're looking to achieve those challenges by? So when you look at your LED commitment, it was done in 2012. You said you'll take 3 years to get 100%. On renewable energy, you are committing by 2020 to get 100%. So there's a balance there on the business case, and your ambition might want you to do it sooner, and the company might want you to do it later. And is that moving? Is that balance moving more towards doing it sooner? And how do you actually not appear to be pushing too hard to do it, say, in 2 years? You could have done LEDs, for example, this year. Okay. How do you push that challenge?
Thank you.
Yeah. You've got to occasionally push too hard just to realize that what it feels like, to be honest. So occasionally you've got to go close to the edge on it. But my job is not to get the business to do irrational things. And we've actually found that, but most things, you just set the most aggressive time frame you can, because the business wants to get things done.
Okay, gentleman over there, then gentleman here, and then let's have some gender equality. Come on, women! Awesome.
Hi, Steve. Thank you very much again for quite an interesting presentation and admirable the work that IKEA is doing. My question to you is, how do you prioritize? It's just, it seems that, IKEA has their hands on quite a lot of things in a very broad strategy. How do you prioritize on those key things? What is your technique on that?
What's your technique, Steve? For God's sake, tell us.
You've got to go for materiality. I mean, that's why we said we'll act for the customers and help them have a more sustainable life at home, and look, where can we have most impact there? That's why we picked lighting and then went into energy generation. So materiality. But then as a big brand, unfortunately, we've got to do everything. This is the one thing. I would love to cut the tail off where we don't have, where there's other businesses that have much bigger impact than us, and say, we'll let those guys can sort that out and we'll follow 5 years later. We don't have that luxury, because we have to do at least a decent job on everything.
Okay, Yes.
Mark Goff.
Can you say who you are, where you're from?
Mark Goff from the Crown Estate. I love the clarity, the simplicity, sustainability by numbers. You then talked about, I believe, 11 strategies, which for me seems very complicated. How do you manage to make sure that sustainability is integrated into all of those and isn't seen as a separate strategy on number 11?
Make sure that you have people involved in all of the teams developing it's actually the right number of strategies for our business and that we've got, but you've got to have, they're developed in team structures, and you just make sure you've got people with the right competence and expertise during the development of the strategy, and you really work through how to embed it there. It's much easier to do that. But no, we're constantly pursuing simplicity in the business, and it's the hardest thing for us to do.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Hi Steve, Abigail Heron from Aviva Investors, coming at you from the best seat in the house, I think. How do you handle the tricky materials like PVC or peat?
PVC is a good one, because apart from electrical cables where we're still pursuing a solution, we banned it because we didn't like it. And so there was a viable alternative, so we just excluded it from the business. And that's the best sort of innovation goals to set yourself, really. So work through those things and actually eliminate them from the business.
Okay, someone at the back and then someone at the front. Keep your hands coming so I know who wants to go next. Yes, got a couple down here as well.
Hello,
Okay.
Steve. James Ewan from Acre. Recently in the UK, tax has been high on the agenda, and whilst companies have been complying with the law, it hasn't been perceived as being fair by a number of the people in the UK. Does that come across your table, tax? And if so, what's the answer to fair tax globally?
When we launched People and Planet Positive, a well-known newspaper and website that's very familiar to all of us decided to run a story on tax the very same day, and actually and put a big blue and yellow box in the photograph. And then we were just mentioned with no real allegation. It wasn't the best piece of journalism, if you ask me, underneath.
Was that mine?
It wasn't your byline, Joe. But it was a Guardian piece, and it was interesting. It's obviously tax is a big issue, and we've just been very open. So we've, through annual reporting on our where we pay tax, how much tax we pay. But what we've started to do is to have a dialogue with key stakeholders around that. So we're a mid-level taxpayer. We're about a 20% level corporate tax, and actually, because we own all our own buildings, it's about $1.5 billion we pay in tax. It's effectively about a 40% rate, which seems okay to me, but it's subjective. So we've started to have a dialogue with some of the stakeholders who are really interested in corporate tax to say this is where we are and this is what we're doing as a business around it. So yes, and we actually included a statement in our annual report that just came out to say we see, paraphrased, we see sort of a fair and responsible approach to taxation as a part of our corporate citizenship and as consistent with our sustainability agenda. And the last thing on this is, I did go into our tax team and I said, you might feel, you corporate tax guys, that you're unloved, but you're actually in charge of revenue collection to help fund governments and a better society. That's what people are doing in corporate tax.
How did that go down?
They really liked it, actually, because it's in honest, if you reframe it, it's kind of true. So and I think many businesses, you want the rules to be clear and you want to behave transparently against those rules. And that's all we want to do.
Okay, gentleman here, and then we've got three at the front. Is there someone okay, then after that, someone at the back, and then we'll do these three. Yes?
Peter Knight, Chairman of Context. Steve, what has the plunge in the oil price done to your business case for renewables?
The plunge in the oil price, and we had a great flurry of emails and phone calls with the plunge in the oil price. We're a long-term business, and the one thing that's certain about the oil price is volatility. And we are a spectacularly short-term species and society. So it's now the new normal. The new normal is ultra-low oil prices. No, it's not. That's just what they are right now. And the new normal was very high and rising oil prices. Nobody knows what they're going to be next year. So if you're making 20-year investment decisions, it's really clear what to do. And then you'd also say, actually, there's very little coupling of the oil price to electricity. Very little coupling of it. A little bit of gas.
Okay. Yes, someone at the back there. and then
Nothing.
Thanks. Justin Wolford from WWF International, supporting our long-standing partnership with IKEA, in fact. So in the promised land of energy independence and the brave new world of forest positive and so on, once you start producing more energy than you need, how much is enough?
How much is enough? There's a good friend of mine, Bill McDonough, who probably many people know, who's author of Cradle to Cradle and stuff like this. And, you know, Bill's view is of why, you know, if you want to be zero, if you want to have zero impact, it's not exactly aspirational. So that's why it's great to have choose to have a positive impact. I think for us, like on the forest positive, we have this 10-year plus partnership with WWF, which has seen an area of about the size of Germany, actually, 35 million hectares, 30 million hectares, that's come under FSC certification through WWF, the FSC, and ourselves working on it. And that's more than the area of forest we need. And I think we've worked out together it'll be about another 15 million hectares. Is that enough? I think what we'd like to see is we flip complete sectors. So our approach on cotton is to say all cotton should be better cotton. If it's better for the farmer and better for the environment, and gives you stronger yields, why would you possibly not do it everywhere? And the same thing really shouldn't all managed forests should be managed to a high standard and be sustainable. So I think it's a very long agenda where we do it until it's done.
I was asking Bill McDonough about plastic waste in the ocean. I said, what do we do about it? He said, think about what fabulous oceans are and then design plastic for that. So it's a complete turnaround in the mindset, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Can I ask you? Oh, sorry, Daniela Vega, Selfridges. I enjoyed hearing about the way you interact with your customers through design and your products. But do you also focus on the behaviour change with your customers, and have you insight into what the response is around that?
I'm making eye contact across the room with my colleague. He's going to wave. Who's waving discreetly. Second week into the job here. We've spent quite, obviously we obsess about customers and we do lots of home visits. So we did a project in Sweden where we got lots of volunteer families around one store in Kalmar, and we did with 9 families. It was quite intrusive, lots of home visits, helping people live a more sustainable life, but finding it was really small stuff. It wasn't just about solar panels on the roof or something like that. It was actually having simple bags behind the door that you could store your recycling on that you could then put on your bike. So, or amazing simple things like putting thicker curtains, stuff that your grandma told you is still relevant today. So we've looked at those, and we've done, first of all, we've worked with our co-workers. So we've got thousands of co-workers taking products at home, blogging about it, doing this. And we've started to roll out into some countries, actually a big experiment with our customers around how to live a more sustainable life at home. So I'll come back to this easy, affordable, attractive. It's got to be all of those things. It's got to be about better solutions that help people in their daily lives.
Okay, we've got 4 minutes left, so we've got 2 questions here, and that might be when we need to finish it, but let's see, here we go.
So Trun Restrick from Hubbub. It's a related question. Where does your remit beginning and end with customers? You can sell them the right products, but is it within your remit to then talk to them about how they use that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, obviously, you have to have you do everything you do with the permission and active buy-in of your customers. But when we've asked our customers, and it's not universal, there isn't the one view, but from China to, I was trying to rhyme with China to Chelmsford, wherever, China to Chiswick, the reaction is kind of the same. People want to know more about it. They care about what others are doing, other people like them, other customers, and they'd like to hear more from us. So we have to share customer-to-customer experience and our experience, yes. To preach, absolutely not.
Okay, final question.
Hi, my name's Neely Safavi. I work for BP as their human rights specialist. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you're working on the first tier supply chain and critical sub-suppliers. What's the biggest challenge that you've faced in terms of decent working conditions in the supply chain, and how have you engaged suppliers to tackle that?
The biggest issue in the supply chain recently has been primarily around working hours in East Asia, especially in China, and people working very long working hours, and the sort of government guidance on 49 hours max, no one was complying with. So we've been on a journey there with suppliers where we went first to IWay 60 to 60 hours a week, and now we're in this full final year shifting to 49. And that's a big deal, at the same time as maintaining pay and benefits for people. And I was in one factory with the management there, and I said, what do your co-workers think about this? And they said, what do you mean? So when you've talked to them about what you're trying to do as moving from these very long working hours down, what have they said? And they said, they haven't said anything because we've not told them, we just started doing it. And I said, don't you think you might want to have a dialogue with them? And we had separate meetings with the workforce. So now some suppliers are much more sophisticated than that and have really led the way. Some have struggled with it and not seen the business case. What's been incredible is everyone that's done it, you've seen productivity and quality increase, and staff retention in what's become a competitive labour market. Staff retention increased dramatically as well. So nobody would reverse it after they've done it, but that's been by far the biggest challenge.
We've got into 1 minute, but I'm going to sneak one last quick question, even though I'm not supposed to, Jim. Speed of change. So when you've been looking at this for many, many years, when you look ahead for the next 5 years, where do you think the real change is going? Is it about innovation? Is it about disasters? Is it about people suddenly waking up? Is it about consciousness? What do you see as the driving forces of change?
I'll choose the positive version of the future. But I think we're going to have incredible innovation, actually. So some of which will be invisible, like lots of stuff we do inside the product, built-in sustainability we talk about. Some of the materials will perform just the same. They'll just have a totally, we'll have carbon positive plastics in the business. We'll have a whole range of new materials. Your textiles will not be traditional textiles. We genuinely will have this easy recycling that will be very, very widespread, I think. At the same time, though, I think the flip side of that is I think we're in for a bit of a bumpy ride on climate change overall. My fear is we're going to have to really step up as a society, and parts of the world risk being defined by extreme weather. So we're going to see fantastic innovation. We will see driverless electric vehicles sweep the streets will dematerialize large parts of society. We'll have new homes where every home is a smart power station. That will become commonplace in our working lives, but we'll have a bumpy ride with climate change at the same time.
Thank you. Well.